14 catches, 185 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Those were Antonio Brown's numbers in his final game of the year, Week 16. He did not play in a must-win Week 17 game against Cincinnati. The story was he had knee discomfort. The truth was he had a beef with a player in practice Wednesday. That player reportedly was Ben Roethlisberger. Brown then sat out practice the rest of the week, skipped Saturday night meetings and a walkthrough, then showed up Sunday expecting to play. Team didn't play him. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette broke the news. More details have been added since, and none of it adds up to anything that's a good look for Brown. It's not new. There are any number of examples of this remarkably talented player behaving in a way that would never be tolerated were he not one of the very best players in the NFL. I don't know how you walk this back. A game your team has to win to have any hope of making the playoffs, and you just tap out. I like Mike Tomlin to a fault. He allows his men wiggle room. But do you lose the room if you allow this to go on? We're joined now by former Steeler Brian Clark. As the saying of the moment goes, there's a lot to unpack here about a critical game, star players, a beef, and a guy that's had his share of them. What do you make of this?
Not surprised that there's beef, not surprised that there's issues. Antonio has been a guy who's been a me guy. He's been a guy who is self-centered in a way where he cares about the individual stats, how I'm being treated, how I'm being perceived or portrayed. But the one player you can't have infighting with is Ben Roethlisberger. There are many players in an organization that Antonio Brown is above. Ben is not one of those people. But for it to get to a point where he's held out of this game, a must-win for the Pittsburgh Steelers, when you see him on the sideline in a mink coat before the game, not Pittsburgh Steelers gear, not sideline gear, totally separate from team, that lets you know that this is an issue that's not only about today or yesterday, it's been something that's happening throughout the year and his career.
He's coming off a monster game against New Orleans, where he, not that anybody didn't know, but where he reminds anybody and everybody, I'm as good as there is at my position. And everyone knows this. And we hear that his work ethic is unmatched. We hear so many great things about this guy, and yet we keep seeing examples of me, and like whatever happened here, you can't cost your availability to your team in this game. So what does Pittsburgh do?
Listen, 100%, but when you're Antonio Brown and you have the mindset that he has, he's above that, right? You're never going to touch Antonio Brown. A quick story, Antonio Brown is walking past the weight room in training camp. And right now we hear that Mike Wallace has turned down his deal. Antonio's going into his 3rd year. You hear that Mike Wallace has turned down his deal. And I knew already that they were going to offer Antonio. And he's walking past, and I turn to the strength coach, and I say, when you give him money, you're going to create a monster. That day in practice, Antonio and I almost get into a fight because he's saying things to Coach LeBeau. He's screaming at Coach LeBeau, screaming at us defensively, don't touch me, I'm the franchise, this and that, because he already had that mindset. And now with success, with money, these things come. And you hear more about him, some things that we don't need to bring up now, but when it comes to just being a good teammate, when it comes to just being supportive, to understanding that you're trying to achieve one goal, that doesn't matter to him. What matters to him is 19 attempts, 14 catches, 185 yards, 2 touchdowns against the Saints. That's what's important to Antonio Brown.
For a franchise that's we before me and always has been, how do you continue to coexist then?
You can't. You can't.
So what are you saying?
This is where Mike Tomlin has to put his foot down and shop Antonio Brown. Now, obviously, you want to get something for him. Right, he's one of the best wide receivers in the league. Matter of fact, he's one of the best football players in the league.
No doubt.
Juju Smith-Schuster has shown you he could be a number 1. Ben Roethlisberger speaks glowingly of James Washington. But this is about the fabric of the team. This is about the guy that goes Facebook Live as your coach is talking and leaks information outside the locker room that never should be there. This is about the guy that publicly talks about not getting the ball or issues with the offense coordinator, knocks over garbage cans or knocks over Gatorade bottles and cans because he doesn't get the rock. At some point, when you're an organization that's built on team, organization that's built on integrity, you have to show the rest of the locker room that. And will he be good going forward? Probably so. But you have to take that stand.
You're saying shop him.
You have to. It's time for him to go.
Wow. I mean, you know the culture and the lay of the land there as well as anybody. He's saying shop him. You better get some get back after what happened to Le'Veon this year.
Absolutely.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.